10-year-old Jacob and his family had just moved into a small one-story house. It was Jacob, his brother Dan, and his mom Kathleen, and their pit bull. When the family first moved into their new home, they noticed one of the rooms near the back of the house didn't feel right. That room was always oddly colder than the rest of the house, and it just gave the family a weird vibe. Because of this, the family mostly used this room for storage. Other than that back room, nothing else about the house was strange in the eyes of the family. But that all changed one night. It was late, really late. Jacob's mom would hide sodas in her room so she could limit how much the kids drank. But luckily for the kids, she was a very heavy sleeper. Jacob went to sneak into his mother's room to steal a soda. He approached her door and found it was already halfway open. Just as Jacob was about to cross the threshold, a loud series of bangings proceeded, almost as if someone was knocking really hard on her door. The shock from the banging knocked Jacob to the floor, and his mother shot up from her bed. Jacob and his mother stared at each other, not knowing what had just happened. There was a look of pure terror in the eyes of Jacob. After that night, things started to get progressively worse. Another night, Jacob was downstairs by himself. He heard a noise and looked over at the room in the back of the house. As he stared at it, the door suddenly began to open. And this didn't just happen once. After this, Jacob saw that door open by itself multiple times. The family thought maybe the door was broken, or maybe the airflow was opening the door, so they decided to experiment. The family checked out the door and made sure it wasn't broken, which it wasn't. They slammed the door as hard as they could, ensuring it was closed very tightly. They left the house and returned a few hours later, finding the door wide open. After the door started to open by itself, more and more things started to happen. One day, Jacob was in the kitchen and heard a bang behind him. He turned around and saw a spoon sitting on the counter. The spoon wasn't there before, and the bang made him think that something took the spoon and dropped it on the counter. Late at night, Jacob would also hear the hangers in his closet rattle against each other, even when the AC was off. He'd hear the floor in his room creaking when he'd be sleeping. He once was in the shower and something started to bang on the door. The banging was so hard that his towel hanging on the towel hanger fell off. Jacob about had enough. He got out of the shower and went and accused his brother of messing with him and his mom. But sure enough, Jacob's mom told him that his brother Dan was with her the whole time he was showering. Things just kept getting worse in the house. Jacob's mom worked from home on the computer and would be typing all day. But late at night, when Jacob would be in his room and everyone was asleep, he'd hear keys clicking frantically on his mother's laptop all the way downstairs, knowing that nobody was down there. Their dog would sit in front of the door to the room in the back and just growl for hours and hours. Despite all of this stuff happening inside the house, the cold room in the back was still the most strange. After months of living in that house, that room still gave anyone who entered it an eerie feeling. As time went on, pieces of the ceiling started to dangle in that room and paint from the wall started curling. The family finally had enough and started asking around if anybody knew anything about the history of the house. That's when they found out from one of their mother's new friends that a middle school boy hung himself in the closet of that back room. Regardless, the family ended up staying in that house 5 years, where they just sort of got used to things that were happening. But this story doesn't end here. At the age of 23, Jacob moved out to California, and his mother is in a new home on the East Coast. The paranormal activity stopped for Jacob's mother as soon as she moved out, but the same can't be said for Jacob. At Jacob's home in California, he has had guitar picks fly off his desk, and he's seen shadowy figures walk past his bedroom door. Jacob flew to the East Coast to visit his mother, and although she hasn't had anything paranormal happen in her new house, Jacob must have brought something with him. It was late at night at his mom's house, and Jacob was in the guest bedroom playing video games with his friends. He was hungry and had a DoorDash gift card, so he decided to use it. He flipped the DoorDash card over and peeled off the little strip of tape on the back that covers the pin. He placed the now curled up strip of tape on his desk, and while he was waiting for his food to arrive, he saw two little things float past his face. At first, he thought it was a bug or something, but then it landed on his desk. Jacob looked down at it and noticed it was silver, with letters on it. Then, more silver things started to fall on his desk. At first, he wasn't sure what he was looking at. Then he realized it was the strip that he had just peeled off the gift card, but it was torn to pieces. Jacob checked the spot where he had tossed the strip before, and it wasn't there. There was something haunting Jacob. When Ava was 7 years old, her dad drew her a picture of a little girl pointing at a hole in a tree trunk. Ava's dad told her the girl's name was Diana. This picture freaked Ava out, but since her dad drew it, she kept the picture. A few years later, Ava and her family moved houses. When they unpacked at the new house, Ava found the drawing in the bottom of one of the boxes. Ava took out the picture and still got creeped out about it. She took the picture and threw it in the top drawer of her dresser. A week later, Ava had an awful nightmare. In her nightmare, she was getting chased through the forest by a little girl. This little girl chased her around for what seemed to be forever, until Ava tripped over a log. She looked up and saw the little girl pointing at a hole in a nearby tree. Ava woke up in a panic, got out of bed, grabbed the picture from the top of her drawer, ran downstairs, and threw the picture in the trash. After she threw away the picture, her nightmare stopped. But a few nights later, Ava was getting ready for bed. She brushed her teeth and then started to walk towards her bedroom. As she was walking down the hallway, she stopped at the staircase and something caught her eye. She looked down the staircase and saw a woman standing there. The woman's hair was messy and she was wearing no clothes. It was dark in the house, so Ava thought her eyes might be playing tricks on her. She turned on the light in the hallway and the woman at the bottom of the stairs disappeared. Ava didn't think much of it and went to bed. The next night, she brushed her teeth before bed and started walking to her room. This time, she intentionally looked down the stairs just to make sure nothing was there. Sure enough, she saw the lady there again. Her hair was messy and she was wearing no clothes. This happened every night for weeks. Ava began to tell her classmates at school about the lady at the bottom of the stairs. Ava named this woman Diana. Eventually, the stories of the lady at the bottom of the stairs got around to the teacher. One teacher spoke to Ava, giving her a big lecture about her imagination and not to scare the other students. Ava was frustrated because nobody believed her, because who is going to believe an 8-year-old girl saying that there is a naked woman at the bottom of the stairs every single night? But one night, Ava looked down the staircase and something was off. The lady wasn't there anymore. But Ava heard footsteps and movement downstairs, as if someone was just aimlessly walking downstairs. The sound of footsteps got louder and louder. These footsteps were coming from the stairs right in front of Ava. Then, all of a sudden, the sound of the footsteps stopped right in front of where Ava was standing, at the top of the stairs. What makes this even scarier is that this happened every single night around the exact same time of night. A few years later, after this incident, a movie called Lights Out was released. If you haven't seen the movie, it's based around an entity that can only do its work in the dark and disappears in the light. On top of that, the entity in the movie is named Diana, and for years, Ava theorized that each of these incidents are all connected, and it horrified her. Her friends and family have told her that something isn't right, and she has been advised by many to see a professional for the suspicion of early signs of schizophrenia. But as of recently, about a month or two ago, Ava saw the lady at the bottom of the stairs again. She locked herself in a bathroom for 2 hours and cried, as this brought back all of the fears she felt as a child. Dylan and his girlfriend were celebrating their 3-year anniversary. They started their night having a great dinner at a restaurant in downtown Los Angeles, California. Just as they were wrapping up their dinner, Dylan's girlfriend told him she had a surprise for him. She had rented a private pool in the Hollywood Hills for a night through an app called Swimply. Swimply is an app where you can enjoy the luxury of a private pool near you. You can find and book a local private pool by the hour. Dylan had never heard of this app before, nor would he ever think to rent out a pool in a stranger's backyard. Dylan found it odd, but since his girlfriend was excited about it, he thought it'd be romantic. On the way to the private pool, Dylan just wasn't feeling it. He wasn't a fan of the idea, but didn't want to say anything, considering his girlfriend paid a decent amount to rent the private pool. As they approached the pool in the Hollywood Hills, Dylan's intuition kept telling him this isn't a good idea. Dylan's girlfriend had told him that she reserved the pool from 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. and they would get there late because their dinner hadn't ended until 8:30. They arrived at the house where they rented the private pool and parked their car. It was super dark and quiet up in those hills. For Dylan and his girlfriend to access the private pool in the backyard, They needed a code from the homeowner, which they had. They were told to go to the gate and enter the code, and the door on the gate would open. However, when they got to the gate, it was already open. Dylan and his girlfriend found this strange, considering they were told they would be the only people there. They opened the gate and continued into the backyard. As soon as Dylan crossed the gate, he got a bad feeling. It was almost a vertigo feeling. There was a large pool and a jacuzzi in the backyard, but the pool had a tarp over it. It was a cold night in Los Angeles, so not having access to the pool wasn't a problem for Dylan and his girlfriend. Dylan looked at the house from the backyard. It was mostly dark inside, except for a few lights. He couldn't tell if anybody was home or not. Dylan and his girlfriend went and got in the jacuzzi, but Dylan couldn't enjoy himself. His eyes just kept focusing on the house. He felt that if he kept looking at the house, he'd see something he didn't want to see. Dylan and his girlfriend didn't have any music or anything. All they could hear was the cold wind slapping against the tarp on the pool. It was around 9:15 p.m., and Dylan told his girlfriend that he didn't like the vibes of this place and that they should leave. To Dylan's surprise, his girlfriend agreed, and this made Dylan even more nervous, knowing that she also felt creeped out. Dylan and his girlfriend rushed to the bathrooms in the backyard to get changed out of their cold, wet bathing suit. They were trying to get out of this backyard as fast as possible. They got done changing and headed to the gate. As they approached the gate, the hairs on the back of Dylan's neck rose, as if someone was stalking him. They got to the gate and hurried to get out of the backyard. Dylan avoided looking at the house as his girlfriend opened the gate, but he couldn't help himself. He looked back at the house, noticing a camera pointed directly at the jacuzzi. Right as they were opening the gate, Dylan's girlfriend yelled, "Oh shit!" Dylan grabbed his girlfriend and ran to their car. In the car, Dylan asked his girlfriend why she yelled. She told him that she saw something in the house window as they were leaving. Something was looking at them. She couldn't describe what it was, but she was confident. Something was in that window, staring at them, and it didn't look human. On the night of the new moon in July of 2018, Kelly's best friend Deb came over to her house around 11:30 p.m. because they were going to go up the street from her house to an empty rental cabin to take pictures of the Milky Way over Rich Mountain. Kelly knew it was the night of the new moon because that's the best night of the month for sky photography, since the moon won't wash out the lights from the stars. The two girls headed up the street to the rental cabin. Straight across the street from the rental cabin is a place that locals call the Shale Pit, which is just an spot. There was a family in the town that owned it, and they used to dig up shale for new driveways of houses. Deb parked her car in front of the rental cabin, and her car was parallel to the road. From where Deb's car was, it was about 20 yards away from the shale pit. The girls set up their tripods and had each taken a few pictures of the night sky. All of a sudden, Kelly heard what sounded like tires on gravel near the river below the cabin. Kelly looked at Deb and said, "Someone is down at the river." Just a few seconds later, the girls heard a loud truck that sounded like it was coming up the road towards the cabin. At this point, the two girls are at the back of the cabin, unable to see the road where they had parked. As the sound of the car got closer, Kelly asked Deb if she had locked her car. Deb had thousands of dollars of camera equipment in her car, so Kelly wanted to make sure that these people couldn't steal it. Deb said she hadn't locked her car, and without saying another word, the two girls grabbed the camera gear they had with them and ran back to the car. As they were heading back to the car, they could see the truck, and it was moving very slow, almost like the driver was creeping around the area. When they got back to Deb's car, they sat their stuff in the back seat. As they looked up from Deb's car, they saw the truck creeping towards them. It was a dark colored truck, and it looked like it could have maybe been an older Chevy truck. Kelly nor Deb could see who was driving the truck, nor how many people were in the truck. Scared, both of the girls got into their car. The truck then pulled right in front of their car, then backed up across the street into the entrance of the shale pit. The lights from the truck were shining directly into the girls' eyes. The truck just sat there, with its loud engine running. Deb asked Kelly what they were doing. Kelly replied saying she didn't know what they were doing, but they were starting to piss Kelly off because she was getting blinded by their headlights. Kelly waited a few more seconds before she reached into her pocket and grabbed her flashlight. She turned the dial around the bulb to high beam, then turned it on and pointed it at the truck. She had intended on shining the obnoxious bright flashlight at them until they turned their headlights off or drove away. A few more seconds passed and the truck still did not turn off their headlights. Kelly decided to turn off her flashlight. Her stomach churned because she thought she had pissed them off and they were up at an empty rental cabin alone. The truck stayed there for a few minutes before it finally turned off its engine. Kelly blinked and all of a sudden, the truck vanished. The two girls looked at each other in shock. The truck didn't fade away or anything. One second it was there, the next second it was gone. Kelly was speechless, but Deb just keeps screaming, "What did I just see? What did I just see? What did I just see?" Kelly told her to stop screaming. She took out her phone and called her husband Jack on the phone. Kelly was hysterical and told Jack to get to the cabin as fast as he could. A few minutes later, Jack arrived. Kelly got out of the car, ran up to him, and explained to him what had just happened. Jack pulled his truck into the shale pit and pulled in as far as he could. He looked around, but there was nothing but dirt. No trees or anything, just dirt. He came back over to Kelly and told her there is nothing there. Kelly and Deb told him the story one more time. And once again, Jack went over to the shale pit and started to look around again. But again, he came back and told them that there was nothing there. The shale pit was literally just dirt and rock with nowhere to go or nowhere to hide. There was especially nowhere to hide for a truck. Kelly, Deb, and Jack all headed back to Kelly and Jack's house. Jack went inside the house and Deb pulled Kelly aside. She said, "There's no need to convince him of what we saw. It's ridiculous. You can't expect him to believe you. We saw what we saw, but nobody is ever going to believe us." The years go on and Kelly and Deb can't even believe themselves. They often talk about it and laugh, but it's really not that funny. Even they knew what they saw. What did they actually see? Cheryl was excited because she was on her way to her friend Evelyn's house for her first ever sleepover. The drive to Evelyn's house was around 40 minutes away. Although Cheryl was very excited, she was also a tad bit nervous. Evelyn lived with her grandmother in a Civil War era house. Cheryl was nervous about being somewhere so rural and quiet. Nevertheless, Cheryl arrived at Evelyn's house. The house was surrounded by a huge field with several hunting dogs in their cages outside the house. There were also motion lights on every side of the house, all over the driveway. Cheryl followed Evelyn to her room. The whole time in the room, Cheryl was very restless and nervous. Evelyn noticed this and suggested that they go downstairs and hang out with her grandma. Cheryl liked that idea, so the two girls made their way downstairs. One of Evelyn's cousins was visiting that night, and Cheryl started to calm down while conversing with the cousin. It was around 11 p.m., and Cheryl found herself staring out the window by the front door. Cheryl couldn't see much considering it was pitch black outside, but she was worried that she might see someone. Cheryl turned to the cousin and said, "What if someone just randomly appears on the porch?" The cousin responded, "I'd jump through the back window and make a run for it." Cheryl laughed, then continued to look through the window into the darkness of the night. She reminded herself that the nearest neighbor was about 2 miles away, so there would be no chance that someone would appear on the porch. That's when she saw a man appear on the front porch. He was in a dirty gray shirt and overalls with work boots. The man was extremely tall and had broad shoulders. The man was covered from head to toe in dirt. His facial expression seemed unhappy or disgruntled. He appeared at the far end of the porch, and his steps caused the whole house to shake. The man passed the front door and made eye contact with Cheryl. Then the man disappeared, but everybody in the house could still hear his footsteps stalking around the side of the house. The cousin ran to the closet, where he grabbed a shotgun from a shelf. He told everybody to go upstairs and lock themselves in a room together. A few minutes later, the cousin knocked on the door to the room they were in. They opened it and the cousin told them that there was nobody outside. If there was a person out there, they couldn't have gone anywhere considering their property was 2 miles of just straight grass. Also, the motion lights didn't get triggered and the dogs outside would have been barking. The cousin told them that there were no footprints or no trail left by anybody. But how could this be possible? Everybody in that house saw and heard the man outside. That's when the grandma said that she has seen that man before. She mentioned she saw him once in her room, and the man said to her, "Your time is coming." These have been 5 allegedly true scary ghost stories. If you guys enjoyed these stories and want to hear more, please be sure to subscribe with post notifications on so you guys never miss an upload. With that being said, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all in the next